Welcome to Know Your Right. My name is Brighton. This is Asake Online. This show seeks to look at the Zimbabwean Constitution as well as the Bill of Rights. Over the past few weeks, we've been looking at the Constitutional Amendment number 2 of 2019. We'll be talking to lawyers, politicians, but today we want to look at the social economic rights, and we're joined by Emmanuel Mlalazi from DBN Attorneys. Say, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Ncube.
First, let's define what are social and economic rights.
To really have a single-term definition of social and economic, some will extend to even cultural rights. It's actually, you can't have a one word for that. But basically, it's a combination of those rights that are not civil or are not political, but are basically the rights that affect your social life, your economic life, and your cultural life. So, for example, you are talking about your rights to self-determination. You are talking about your rights to family, to marriage, to form trade unions. Basically, those are the rights that you are looking at. And the rights probably to practice your culture, the rights to gather social, the betterment of a social life in a nutshell.
But however, now we're under COVID-19 lockdown, and some of these rights have been violated because of this national shutdown or lockdown. This will the right to trade, for example. Combis are not allowed to operate in Zimbabwe because of the lockdown. Can you say this right has been violated?
The interesting part about the Zimbabwean constitution is that the drafters, I wouldn't know whether I would say that they were clever or what, but in their wisdom, when they were crafting the socio-economic rights, they always said that they will be provided within the limits of the resources of the country. Mm-hmm. If you pick any socio-economic right that you'll see on the constitution, you will see that it always have that subject or that provision to that the state provides it within its limits. So meaning that once you start arguing about COVID, the state will always come up to say that, look, we had to limit that for the protection of the greater good. You understand? So that right is limited either by public interest or by the availability of resources. So I would not want to comment really on whether it has been constitutional or not, but I would say that there should have been a way to still protect trade in this time of COVID. Because look, you do not want to curtail one right at the expense of the other. Like now, if people are seated at home, what are they going to eat? You know. So when looking at socio-economic rights, consider that they are intertwined. The right to trade will spill to your right to food, to your right to shelter, to your right to provide for a family. You understand? In as much as we also understand that the government was really cognizant of that when it came up with a moratorium on payments of rent, but that is just one part. The food issue still remain there. So what are we saying when we're taking away the trade from the combi drivers, the trade from the vendors? What are we saying about their right to food? What are they going to eat? You see, that is my worry about how this COVID has affected socio-economic rights.
Let's look at the plight of the informal sector, in particular vendors. How have their rights been violated during COVID-19 lockdown?
You see, again, I'd like to think that the program, if I can say it was a program or it was a policy, it was haphazard. It was not, you cannot say it was pre-planned. It's like someone woke up and say, tomorrow we're going to demolish all the structures for the vendors. Why I would like to see that as wrong or as unconstitutional is that I would expect the local authority, first and foremost, to identify places where vendors will then be moved to. Before you can actually demolish their structures, I think it is better to first come up with an alternative place or premises where those vendors are going to trade from. Because to simply destroy their structures and not provide for an alternative place for trading, you have violated their right to trade. First and foremost, the society needs to understand that vendors did not wake up and choose to be vendors. These are people who were formerly employed in the industries, who were formerly employed in the formal employment. But because the industries have closed, the economy has dwindled, they are now forced to be vendors. So at that point already, their right to choose a profession of their choice has already been compromised. When the constitution says that everyone has a right to employment, the international instruments, if you're looking at the International Covenant of Civil on social, economic, and cultural rights, even if you are to look at the African Charter itself, you'd note that every person has a right to choose a profession. But is that choice there when the places where you are supposed to practice the profession are no longer there? You understand? Mm-hmm. So we have already failed to create an environment as a nation where every child can dream to be involved in this profession. Thereby, people have now adjusted to say that we're no longer focusing much on the profession that we already wanted, but we are now being vendors. Then that plan B, the local authority comes and crashes it again. So that's why I have a problem, because when you look at it that way, that is double jeopardy. Your dreams of a profession are shattered. You come with a plan B, it's also shattered, but alternative solutions are not given. So I was interested, I was hoping that one day the vendors could actually group up and have what you call a class action against the city council for destroying those stalls. I'm not, I need people to understand that I'm not really against destroying the stalls. Mm-hmm. I'm against destroying without providing an alternative. Because to be fair, the town is clean, it's not, it looks good, but what are we saying about those people that were taken away? What are we saying about their right to food, their right to trade, their right to provide for their families? What are we saying about that? Is that program constitutional? Was that policy constitutional? Was it fair? Was it just in the circumstances? Those are the questions that I would have loved to see the court interpret.
But one can argue and bring up of the issue of environmental rights, bring about the issue of having a clean environment. Now, look at the market area in Bulawayo. It was not clean. One can argue and say they wanted to decongest the city and provide a clean environment by moving the vendors to other areas.
You say, my friend, clean environment is not only limited to the CBD. If you are to uplift someone from the CBD because you want the town to be clean, and then you let them go to the high density areas, to areas that are not designated for carrying on that trade, are you not simply transferring that uncleanness from the CBD to the areas where we stay? Because to me, that's just shifting a problem from point A to point B. So all we need is that, if, for example, where they are now trading from, are the toilets there? Is there water there for them to have clean hands? For when they're selling fruits, for someone to wash the fruit that is bought, is all of those things, are they there? So I think you have just shifted the problem from CBD to our residential areas, but you have not solved anything. The key issue still remains that why can't we have a designated area that is properly prepared for trade to take place? Why is it difficult to come up with something of that structure? I believe those vendors also pay. They pay something to be prepared. Why can't that money to have them to come up with a proper structure for them where they can trade? Because now we have also talked of environmental rights. There is also a downside. There is also a negative impact of the environment, especially when you're talking of pollution in the residential areas where we now stay. So at the end of the day, I believe that unless and until structures are built to accommodate the vendors, we have not solved any problem.
Our constitution talks about the right to clean water. Do you think the Bulawayo City Council will be able to fully treat water from Kamitiam?
Again, let me go back to the right of social and economic rights. Social and economic rights, they also touch on policy. looking at policy, we know that we have been having problems of water. So your questions really are that, first and foremost, before we can talk about whether Kami water is clean, we need to look at the resources that have been put at Kami. If those resources were then put in the dams that we currently have, to probably deal with siltation, to probably deal with upgrading the machinery itself, will we not be able to get water that we are guaranteed is clean? Remember that the water that currently we are guaranteed is clean. Are we not? Why not take those resources that we want to put at Kami to bettering the resources that we already have and that guarantee cleanness? Having said that, the problem with Kami, I'm not so sure what is really the biggest issue of it. Is it contamination from human waste, or is contamination from the industries, industrial waste? Because if it's industrial waste, again, you understand that chemicals probably are more dangerous than human waste. So at the end of the day, I need to know, maybe before, since the headline was today, before I can really comment at large. But we live in Zimbabwe. We know things change. They are not constant. They are not stable. They are volatile. Things change. If today City Council says that, for example, we have 10 million US dollars to purify water from Kami, what happens tomorrow when City Council can no longer raise that money? Do we then abandon that project? Or you will then provide people with the water that is not clean? I think there's too much dialogue that needs to happen around the Kami water before it can actually be channeled to our houses. What guarantee do they have that for the next 10 or so years, they will always have funds to purify that water? Because you do not want to start a project, then leave it in the mix. It then turns out to be a waste of resources. And now we come back to reasonability of a program that you have come up with again. So that is the conversation that we need to have before we talk about the constitutionality. Because socioeconomic rights deal with the resources. They deal with budgetary issues. Like I said, that if you pick any socioeconomic right in the Constitution, it will always tell you that within the limited resources of the country. So now the country has already acknowledged that it has limited resources, and you want to embark on that program that will need you to constantly feed money into it, because there's no way that you will say you will set up a pipe and it's all system go. You set up a pipe and you continually need to purify. You understand? Are the resources to continually purify that water available? Or if they are not available, what are the programs or the proposed way forward of raising that money? You understand? So if City Council comes up with a projected plan and tell that this is our revenue income, this is how we intend to keep on raising income to purify that water, and the water will be purified, then I think I would not have a problem. But once people start getting sick from water from Kami, then we might now talk about whether or not the constitutional right to clean water has been violated. But for as long as it is coming clean and has no side effects, then we can applaud the City Council, we can applaud the government for having complied with their right to provide citizens with clean water. But the conversation will come once that water is no longer clean. That will be a constitutional issue, because that will now mean that City Council is posing a danger to its people. It will now mean that we no longer have potable clean water, but we're actually being exposed to pandemics and to dangers by our authorities.
Right, let's talk about the freedom of association during COVID-19 lockdown.
You see, I would like to think that, yes, that's a violation of our rights to clean water, because providing the citizens with dirty water, you're actually exposing them to more healthy issues, when the Constitution itself gives a right to health. But instead of you now positively impacting on that right, you are negatively impacting on it because you are bringing dirty water. We know in the past in cities like Harare, they've been affected with cholera, and and typhoid, some of those diseases. So that is one of the reasons why those diseases will now come, because the local authority would have failed to give clean water. Because giving dirty water, you cannot say that you have provided water. The provision in the constitution is not only about providing water, it is about providing clean water. So if you provide dirty water, you cannot say you have complied with the constitutional requirement, can you? You see, this is where my challenge is. It is wrong for city council to provide or dirty water. It is unconstitutional. It is a violation of a right to clean water. It is a violation to your right to health.
Now let's look at the limitations. Now, everybody comes with the limitations. Does the social economic rights, what are the limitations of social and economic rights in terms of limitations?
The limitations of social economic rights, I'd like to think, let me mention the two faults that actually come to my mind. The first one is the resources. The second one is the enforceability part of it. When I talk about the resources, is that, like I've said, that your right to socio-economic rights include that the government positively does something for its citizens. Meaning that if you are talking right to water, you are right to shelter, you are asking that the government does something, puts some financial assistance for that right to be realized. You understand? As opposed to a civil right, which is a right to vote or a right to life. The government will not have to do it, just have to protect it, that it doesn't interfere with it. It has to. But when it comes to socio-economic rights, over and above protecting it, you have to provide financial support to that right for it to be realized. So that is the challenge when it comes to socio-economic rights, because for third world countries which are facing monetary issues, they have the same problems where governments fail to provide the money to realize those kind of rights. However, not all socio-economic rights needs money. You have your right to not be forced into a marriage. The government is also, there have been cases where I'm sure it's a case of the Muzuru case in Harare. It was talking about stopping child marriages. That's a socio-economic right, but it does not need the government to put money for it to be realized. So socio-economic rights have a negative duty on government and a positive duty on government. The positive duty is whereby you expect government to put financial assistance on it. Those are the ones that gives us challenges, because every time you have to illustrate that the government has the resources, but it's not using those resources for the betterment of your social life. You understand? So the challenge now, if you are to go to court, is how then do you prove that we have those resources? How do you prove that the resources have been misused? And how do you prove that where those resources have been used, it was not a priority, they should or could have been used this way? So when you approach the courts on an element of enforceability will have that challenge, because it will look like the judiciary is interfering with the executive duties or with the legislative duties, and there's the principle of separation of powers when we're coming to law. So because it will then require that the judges or the judiciary tell the executive how to approach their budget, which areas to prioritize and which areas not to prioritize. However, I would like to give you an example of a case in South Africa that happened. It's called the Grootboom case. It's an Afrikaans word. It's the Grootboom case. It was in Cape Town. What happened is that there were people who occupied land that was earmarked for a housing scheme. Those people, the program of the housing scheme then wanted to evict those people so that they can start that program. The courts held there that you cannot evict those people before you first identify another area where you are going to house those people or to give them temporary shelter while you are building. So what that case provides for you is the reasonability of a program. and the reasonability of its implementation. So constitutionally, I would say that if there's a program in Zimbabwe, it has to be reasonable. And its implementation has also to be reasonable. It cannot perpetuate one side of people and then marginalize the other. You understand? So when you're bringing socio-economic rights to court, you are saying that these funds are there, but are they being reasonably used for the betterment of everyone? But if those funds are not there, or if the program is silent on the funds, then how then do you prove that they have been misused? That's where the challenge is. And generally, our courts are conservative. They would not want to upset the executive or the legislature. That's the challenge that we meet in Zimbabwe and in all the third world countries per se, if I may say.
Now, let's look at the issue of access to information as enshrined in the Constitution of Zimbabwe. This is our data prices in Zimbabwe, they're high. How is that a violation to people having access to information?
You see, when it comes to access of information, one would argue that high data prices or the manner in which you get information is not only limited to ways that needs data. You understand? You can still get your information through hard copies of newspapers. You can still get your information through fair enough, through technology. But it's not everyone that then needs to have data to access information. So how then do you classify that data has been difficult to this person and has not been difficult to this person? Because you have someone who is in the rural areas who does not even have a phone, for that matter. You understand? So when you are fighting that fight, on whose behalf are you fighting it for? That's where my challenge is.
Also, if you can look at the number of people that are consuming information and consuming from online sources.
Yes, actually, I'd like to think a fight for data is best brought by students. Now that we are in this COVID setup and the students need to research, they need to have information. Some of them are actually studying, say, in countries in South Africa. And the South African university will simply tell you that we are virtual, so you can actually study wherever you are. Even if you're in Zim, we conduct our classes virtual. So if a student movement can then challenge the high data prices, that will make sense to me. That will make a better constitutional case or a better case before the courts than just picking anyone in the streets to complain about data. Because even if data was to be cheap, there's no guarantee that every human being that is working in the streets is worried about the data prices or wants to access information. Some people are just comfortable with that access to information, you know. So you have to show the local stand. The local stand is what we mean that you have a right to bring a claim to court on behalf of a cause. So whose cause are you bringing really when you are talking about the data prices? If you are students, it's a cause of students. It makes sense. It's furthering your educational rights, your right to education. But if the multitude, you know, they have to be an identified person clamoring for a right. So because, like I said, the right to information, it's easy to get it on technology, but there are also other means of getting information. You have your TVs, you have your newspapers. So it will be difficult just as a citizen to wake up and say that I'm challenging the data.
So what can you say about the issue of vendors who were formally removed from their stalls from the 28th of March up to now? They're still not operating. What can you say to them vis-a-vis the issue of the economic rights and how that has impacted the economy in Zimbabwe?
The economy of the country definitely gets impacted because the trade on itself is actually lowered, meaning that I'll give you an example for an example of the 2% tax that you pay for every transaction. If trade has gone low, it means that there are fewer transactions to be taxed. Number one. Number two, resources are channeled towards what I'll say immediate needs, towards food, towards rent. You understand? While before, people can be innovative with their resources. People can actually think of projects, can think of doing new things, can think of assisting another human being, can think of sponsoring another human being, and have projects nourish out there. But now, if you have money, because you do not know when that COVID will end, you rather keep that money, safe keep it, because you don't know if you spend it, if you sponsor this project, if you do this, what if I then don't regain my money? So the expenditure is definitely lowered on issues that are not immediate needs. You understand? But the expenditure seems to have been channeled to those immediate needs like your electricity, your food. So I think the economy in the greater scheme, it dwindles because of this COVID.
Also, when looking on social rights, when they are violated, how does they affect the common man in Zimbabwe?
Usually they affect as a group. If I'm to give you an example of the right to water, the right to water, we have spoke about it, the right to trade. I've illustrated how many people get affected because they were vendors. If your mother, you're a singly led household, the mother is no longer able to trade, it affects the children in that household, whether they will be able to go to school, they are affected, their rights to education is affected. You look at also the right to family. A right to family is not only just about being family, it's about being happy as a family. So once that financial strain comes into the family disintegrates. So there's a lot that happens when social economic rights are violated, because social economic rights are intertwined, they are related to each other. When you don't have water, you have health issues, you have a lot of things that are happening at the end of the day. So yes, community get affected once the social economic rights are not provided. Again, the freedom of association it can be limited. In the spirit of national interest, or for the greater good, if you can put it that way. I would not have queries on the limitation of freedom of association in this particular period of COVID. If it was limited outside COVID, I would say it is a violation of our constitutional rights. But now, when you enjoy your right as a person, it is requested of you to not then harm another person by your enjoyment of your rights. So if we were to allow people to keep on associating, and we already acknowledge as a country that we have limited resources, what then will happen if the coronavirus spreads? And again, looking at it, that the limitations are not only in Zimbabwe, they are pretty much all over the world. So I'd like to think that once it's commonly accepted all over the world, it will be a bit like, it will be a bit unfair for one person to then go feel like the rights are being prejudiced when it is there to protect the whole world. Because look, even in the closing of borders, it's almost all countries that have done that. They have actually stopped the freedom of association of their citizens, of our citizens, of the globe as globalization as a phenomenon. It has been stopped because no one is traveling. So for a greater scheme of things, until such time that we have proper information on COVID, because as I say it right now, scientists are still trying to find out what's really is happening. So there needs to be a period where rights are limited until such time that a cure has been found, or even if it's not a cure, but a better way of surviving has been found. I think I'll not have any problems with what is happening right now.
But what's happening right now in Zimbabwe, we have long queues. We have buses now carrying over 50 people. We have long bank queues. There are people who isn't that indirectly associating?
You see, two wrongs don't make a right. I'd say the queues at shops, the queues at Zupco are things that are beyond the normal person's reach. You have to go to work, you have to earn a living, you have no any other choice unless and until again another class action is brought to liberalize the transport system. You understand? Which will go back to socio-economic rights, to your right to trade. Because some people are saying that I want to trade, I want to go to work to town, but I'm forced to queue in a Zupuku. That is endangering my health. And someone can decide to then stay at home because he's afraid of endangering. You have interfered with his right to trade. But be that as it may, what I'm simply saying is that there are areas where the right to associate is beyond our measure. Then there are areas where we can curtail ourselves. For example, look, if we are saying that find ourselves at a Zuko queue because we have no choice, it does not mean that now we have to find ourselves playing soccer because that's a choice. You understand? So I believe where we have a choice, we can keep maintaining social distancing, we can keep limiting those numbers to less than 50. Where we do not have a choice, we need to then lobby the government, either through activism, through applications at court, to lobby the government to say that, look, we are finding ourselves queuing for Zupco. Can't the industry be opened for more transport players? Or can't more buses be put so that at the end of the day, we don't come up with a regulation that are self-defeating? You understand? I would like to think that a court process can be brought to either lobby the government to open up space for transport. I think I saw something along those lines from is it City Council, if I'm not mistaken, where they are trying to lobby government to allow that some private players be allowed to. That would be a good way of looking at it.
Lastly, what can you say to the citizens about the social and economic rights?
What I would like to say is that we have, for the past years, emphasized more on civil and political rights. Your rights to vote, your rights to life. You see, we have neglected that there are so many other rights, the socio-economic rights, your rights to shelter, your rights to self-determination, your rights to your sexual orientation, those kind of rights that we have packed them as second-class rights. I would like to see more activism, more open dialogue about socio-economic rights, not only a focus on civil and political rights. I think in closing, I had a quote from the declaration of the African Congress in 1946. So in closing, I'll just read it for the viewers at home. It went like, we are determined to be free. We want education. We want the right to earn a decent living, the right to express on thought and emotions, to adopt and create forms of beauty. We will fight in every way for freedom, democracy, and social betterment. So let us keep on fighting for social betterment. That is all.
We've been watching Know Your Right. This is Asake Online. My name is Brighton Ncube. We've been talking to Emmanuel Mlalazi from DPN attorneys, talking about the issue of social economic rights as enshrined in the Constitution of Zimbabwe. Till next time, do enjoy the show, and remember to follow us on Twitter @SideZW, @TheRealBFactor, #Asake. Know Your Right.